Señores, ¿se acuerdan cuando Trump hablaba de comprar Groenlandia? Como si fuese una propiedad más para poder añadir a su portafolio de bienes y raíces.
I'll go to both of you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Any updates on Greenland? Will the president be making any trips, and do we have any details you can share with us?
I don't have any future foreign trips to read out for you. We just returned home from one. But the president maintains the reasoning for Greenland's strategic purposes in the Arctic, and he continues to remain committed to the idea of obtaining Greenland in whatever means we can to advance our national security interests in the region.
Resulta que esta idea imperialista no solo ha fracasado estrepitosamente, sino que ahora Groenlandia le ha dado una respuesta bastante clara y contundente. Lo que pasó, amigos, básicamente es una cachetada diplomática. Groenlandia firmó un acuerdo minero por 30 años con un consorcio europeo, ignorando por completo a Estados Unidos y dejándole en claro a Trump que el mundo no gira alrededor de él. Este trato se ha firmado con Northside Mining, una alianza danesa-francesa que pues ahora podrá extraer un mineral que es clave para producir aluminio directamente desde territorio groenlandés. Pero lo más irónico aquí es que esta era precisamente el tipo de acceso a recursos que Trump decía querer cuando hablaba de anexar Groenlandia. Pero bueno, al final, mientras las empresas europeas se aseguran décadas de explotación minera, Estados Unidos se queda sin nada. Y ojo amigos, no estamos hablando solo de negocios. Este mineral es una alternativa ecológica a la bauxita, con aplicaciones estratégicas, temas de aviación, transporte e incluso defensa. Es oro puro, al menos para cualquier país que piense en futuro. Pero mientras Europa negocia con inteligencia, ¿qué es lo que hace Trump? Lanza amenazas, fanfarronea como si pudiese comprar un país a punta de dólares. Es más, el propio ministro de Recursos Minerales de Groenlandia lo dejó muy en claro. Si delegaciones de empresas estadounidenses visitaron la isla este año, pero no existieron diálogos, al menos ninguno formal con el gobierno de Trump, ni señales reales de inversión. Nada, solo ruido. Y mientras Trump trataba a Groenlandia como un trofeo colonial, Europa estaba haciendo lo que pues cualquier país tiene que hacer: construir relaciones, respetar soberanías, cerrar acuerdos duraderos. Donald Trump se la pasó meses y meses hablando de Groenlandia como si fuese una subasta de bienes y raíces, haciendo comentarios grandilocuentes, actuando como si pudiera apropiarse de un territorio de otro con solo chasquear los dedos. Ignoró por completo que Groenlandia tiene su propio gobierno, su propio pueblo y su propio derecho soberano a decidir con quién hace negocios. Mientras él estaba con este actuar, los europeos estaban sentándose a negociar, reconociendo la autonomía de Groenlandia y demostrando cómo se hace verdadera diplomacia. Amigos, el contraste aquí es brutal. Según el gobierno groenlandés, la cooperación con la Unión Europea y Dinamarca ha sido mucho más fluida que cualquier intento de contacto que ha tenido Estados Unidos. Mientras Donald Trump solo imponía condiciones y lanzaba ultimátums, Europa avanzaba con diplomacia real y al final, amigos, ha dado resultados. Este es el precio de tratar las relaciones internacionales como si estuvieras comprando un campo de golf en Florida. No puedes ir a lanzar billetes al aire y esperar a que otros países te entreguen sus recursos. No puedes ver el mundo como si existiera únicamente para servir a tus intereses. Y lo peor es que esto no solo le pasó con Groenlandia, amigos. Trump se dedicaba a enemistarse con aliados históricos. ¿Y qué hacía China? China avanzaba en África, en América Latina, cerrando acuerdos estratégicos. Rusia y Irán fortalecen sus lazos. Las empresas europeas se posicionan en el Ártico. Y Trump sigue haciendo demandas absurdas que solo terminan aislando a Estados Unidos.
I've been warning for months. America wants our land, our resources, our water, our country. Never. But these are not idle threats. President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never ever happen.
Y no termina ahí, ¿no? Porque hasta países aliados, los candidatos conservadores alineados con Trump, están perdiendo elecciones. Lo hemos visto en Australia, Canadá, Rumania. Todos están dándole la espalda al trumpismo.
Australian people have every right to view this action by the Trump administration as undermining our free and fair trading relationship and counter to the shared values that have always been at the heart of our two nations' long-standing friendship. This will have consequences for how Australians see this relationship. These are uncertain times, but Australians can be absolutely certain of this. Our government will always stand up for Australian jobs, Australian industry, Australian consumers and Australian values.
En Rumania, por ejemplo, hace apenas unos días, un centrista pro-UE derrotó al candidato de ultraderecha, que él mismo se autodenominaba el presidente MAGA, y que prometía convertir a su país en un satélite de visión trumpista. Resultado, derrotado, fuera de juego, sin empleo político. Todo esto nos deja en claro que la retórica de América primero en realidad deja a Estados Unidos en último lugar, que las amenazas y el ego no construyen relaciones, sino que la destruyen, que el trumpismo no solo aleja a los aliados, sino que deja el campo libre para que los rivales llenen ese vacío. Y lo más frustrante de todo esto es que era completamente evitable. Estados Unidos pudo haber estado en la mesa de negociación con Groenlandia. Las empresas pudieron haber estado compitiendo por esos derechos mineros. Pudo haberse logrado algo significativo. Pero Trump prefirió actuar con arrogancia, tratar a Groenlandia como una colonia. Y terminó perdiendo. Pues bueno amigos, por si no lo vieron, recientemente Trump en su red social, Truth Social, ha amenazado con imponerle a Apple un arancel del 25% si no comienza a fabricar sus iPhones en Estados Unidos. Y bueno, como si fuese poco, también propuso un arancel del 50% a los productos europeos, porque según él las negociaciones no van a ningún lado. ¿Qué tan grave es esto? ¿Puede hacerlo legalmente? ¿Y por qué esto es un problema mucho más allá de lo económico? Vamos a ver esta noticia.
Some breaking news. Right now, markets are down after President Trump escalated his trade war this morning. In his first salvo, the president threatened Apple CEO Tim Cook with a 25% tariff unless his company begins manufacturing iPhones in the U.S. Moments later, the president threatened a blanket 50% tariff on imports from the European Union, claiming trade discussions are going, quote, nowhere. That new number is up from Trump's initial 30% tariff on the EU from Liberation Day back in April. And this hour, U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer is expected to speak with his European trade counterpart. Let's get more on all of this with NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans and Jared Bernstein, former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors in the Biden administration. All right, thank you guys both for being with us. Christine, let's just start with the European Union threats that we're seeing. Talk to us about the potential impact here. And you point out that this threat is even above and beyond that initial tariff that he had put in place.
Remember when the president went in the Rose Garden on so-called Liberation Day on April 2nd, and he rolled out these huge numbers of tariffs against friend and foe alike for the United States. This number that he's threatening in this Truth Social post is larger than that pause tariff from April 2nd. So that's getting an awful lot of attention here. And the president saying, and his Treasury Secretary saying on the television earlier this morning that this is not a great negotiation so far. Now, we know there's already a call scheduled for today. So the president's Truth Social post, his Treasury Secretary on TV, two other people in the administration are going to be talking to the European Union. Who knows if this is a negotiating ploy or a negotiating move from the White House. But what moves is the market jerks around whenever, frankly, there are these stops and starts in negotiations.
Let's listen to what the Treasury Secretary said earlier today.
I believe the president believes that the EU proposals have not been of the same quality that we've seen from our other important trading partners. I would hope that this would light a fire under the EU because, Bill, I've said before, EU has a collective action problem here.
Jared, what is your reaction to what we're hearing from this administration, this power play? How do you expect European officials to respond?
I think this is just yet another unfortunate incident of these folks being in way over their heads, not understanding the relationship between global trade, what's fair, what's unfair, impact on markets, on businesses. You know, I just checked the Russell 2000. We don't talk about that enough. That's a small cap index reflecting smaller businesses. It's down 12% since inauguration day. That's a real problem for small businesses. Here's something I didn't hear from anybody today in the administration, including the clip you just played. What's wrong with our trading relationship with Europe, with the EU? What precisely are they doing that's so unfair? If we were talking about China, I myself could give you a list of ways in which they're unfairly dumping excess capacity in our economy that really warrant some pushback. But no one has articulated how the EU is ripping us off, that's Trump's term, in trade terms. And I didn't hear it from Bessent now. I've never heard it. Our trade with Europe is mutually beneficial. There are barriers on both sides. Perhaps they could come down a point or two. But this is a non-problem that this administration has elevated to, in fact, a fairly deep problem.
And let's turn to the president's 25% tariff increase on Apple products, this threat. Christine, can the president legally just enact a tariff on one company and certain products?
So he would have to zero in on the tariff code for India and smartphones, because what we know is that Apple has said that its U.S.-bound smartphones, they want to source them more in India and away from China. They've been moving away from China. And the president has complained that that's not good enough. He wants them made in the United States. Tim Cook has explained that the workforce, the size of the workforce, the availability of the workforce, the investments you need in the United States are very, very difficult. It's more efficient to do it the way Apple has done it. And, you know, one analyst this morning, Dan Ives, who closely follows this company, says it's an absolute fairy tale to think you're going to make iPhones in the United States. And if you were somehow to be able to, as he says, sprinkle pixie dust and make them, they'd cost more than $3,500 a piece. And there wouldn't be, you know, it's just, this is the most efficient way to do it. So you've got the president and Apple really at loggerheads about the strategy of this really important American company.
Yes, an American company. Jared, the president specifically targeting a company almost feels like picking winners and losers in this economy. Is this the way it's supposed to work in America?
It's a really important point on it. No, it's not the way it's supposed to work, and neither is the president supposed to stand up there and tell Walmart not to raise prices. I mean, this is the kind of thing you expect more out of authoritarians like Viktor Orban than we've seen in our country. So, you know, Trump has this kind of king-like approach to so much of what he's doing, whether it's executive orders or using the bully pulpit, or for that matter, essentially starting a trade war by himself. But, you know, it's not really by himself. He has so many enablers, and I'm not just talking about his staff. They're paid to enable him. I'm talking about the Congress, particularly the congressional majority. Nobody is holding back what we all clearly see as irrational, destructive policy. You know, it takes decades to build up trade relations and literally weeks to tear them down. And I'm seeing such a discouraging lack of resistance from people whose job it is to try to block stuff like this.
There's talk, of course. We've heard some of his Republican allies say, oh, this isn't a good idea. That's going to hurt people in my district or in my state. But the action is where we haven't seen much teeth. Thank you very much, Jared Bernstein, Christine Romans. Appreciate you both.
Ok, amigos. Donald Trump quiere que Apple fabrique sus productos en Estados Unidos, ¿no? ¿Suena patriótico? Tal vez. ¿Es realista? Ni de cerca. Miren, la economía no funciona a base de caprichos presidenciales. Apple no fabrica en China porque le caiga bien Xi Jinping. Lo hace porque hay una cadena de suministros que son hiper optimizadas, tiene trabajadores capacitados, tiene componentes que llegan en horas y lógicamente tiene costos que no destrozan el producto final. Decir que quiere traer esa producción a Estados Unidos no es solo ignorar la realidad industrial del país, es mentirle a la gente. Porque amigos, fabricar un iPhone en Estados Unidos no es como hacer una hamburguesa. No hay la infraestructura, no hay el talento técnico a escala, no hay forma de hacerlo sin disparar el precio. $3,500 por un iPhone. Eso fue lo que dijo ese analista, ¿no? No está exagerando. El problema es que Trump vende estas ideas como si fuesen pan caliente, apelando a una narrativa de América primero, que suena bien, pero que económicamente no pueda sostenerse.
You said this morning that if they don't make their iPhones in the U.S., you're going to hit them with a 25% tariff. Right. Do you have the power to tariff one single company? And why would you want to hurt an American company in that way?
It would be more. It would be also Samsung and anybody that makes that product. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair. So anybody that makes that product, and that'll start on, I guess, the end of June. It'll come out. I think we have that appropriately done by the end of June. So if they make that product. Now, again, when they build their plant here, there's no tariff. So they're going to be building plants here. But I had an understanding with him that he wouldn't be doing this. He said he's going to India to build plants. I said, that's okay to go to India, but you're not going to sell into here without tariffs. And that's the way it is, yeah.
Well, why would you hurt an American company?
What makes you confident, sir, that
all right, Donald Trump right there in the Oval Office being asked about a brand new tariff that he announced today, a tariff on Apple products of 25%. He's also saying, though, that he's going to add that over to anyone else who makes the same product, like Samsung or whatever. This is not helping the markets. They are in the red after Donald Trump not only did that on Apple products, but also threatened a 50% tax this morning on all imports from the European Union as well. We're going to put up the market numbers on the screen right now. Joining us now, NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans. All right, so down 35%. It's been up and down today. Christine, I guess explain, I thought we were coming to a series of deals. I thought things were stabilizing, or at least that was the messaging that was coming out of the White House. But again, it just is a reminder that Donald Trump could wake up on the wrong side of the bed at any moment and send out a Truth Social post that sends everybody spiraling. There is no consistency.
And you have these shifting deadlines and shifting tariff levels and now shifting explanation of what kinds of goods will be taxed at the border at what rate. And what the market sees is more not necessarily indecision, but uncertainty about what people, and then all of a sudden you're hearing about a new June deadline. On the EU in particular, we can talk about Apple in a second, but on the EU in particular, on so-called Liberation Day on April 2nd at the Rose Garden, the president put a 39% tariff on the EU, and people were like, wait, what? And then he paused that, and it's now 10. And now that pause expires like the first week in July.
And now it's up to 50?
And so now he's saying 50, threatening 50.
Why? But it was at 39. Why is it now at 50?
No one knows. And then, well, because he's saying that they're not seriously offering a serious negotiation.
So this is a negotiation tactic.
Probably. I mean, that's what we can assume, but the market still is uncertain. And then we hear he just mentioned June, a new June deadline in that briefing there. And so companies that import things from the EU are concerned. They import things like, drugs, medicines, things that on one hand, the administration is trying to make less expensive, and then on the other hand is threatening import duties, also cars, also a lot of different kinds of machinery that small businesses need to use in their own manufacturing. And that's on top of course, steel and aluminum tariffs. So it's just a new complexity and a new shifting deadline in an already kind of unclear trade strategy.
Okay, so Apple, 25% tariff on Apple products, I guess also Samsung, Galaxy phones, Google phones, whatever. I assume, although it hasn't been clearly laid out, that's going to make that's a one estimate for what it would mean to make an Apple phone here in the United States, to get a factory to start selling the product. It would cost $3,000 for an Apple phone
or more. I mean, one estimate I saw was $3,500. So a 25%.
Who's going to buy a $3,500 cell phone?
I mean, unclear. I mean, the reason it's made the way it is now is because that is the most efficient way to make it for that price point for the American consumer.
And the workers in China, whether we agree with it or not, are not making the same salaries, baseline salaries, that an American worker would be required to make.
I mean, when you think of these vast campuses that are making consumer electronics in Asia, in different countries in Asia, frankly, and around the world, these are vast campuses. I can't even imagine what that would be like in the United States. Now, Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, talked about.
I mean, it is tasks where you're supposed to be putting like one pin into another in every like 13 seconds over and over again for 12 hours at a time. I mean, these are things that I just can't imagine that happening at a mass scale here in the United States.
Well, the other thing that like trade experts are puzzled by is like why the fixation on this product that is so efficiently made someplace else that makes American workers and consumers more efficient and can afford.
Also,
why not
able
focus
to do other things?
Right, and the United States does things like exports, education services.
Yeah,
very
Harvard,
like some things like that we do that are a higher value, kind of. Anyway, there.
I've gone over time. I could keep talking to you about this like every day. Christine Robbins, thank you so much.
Y si todavía tienen dudas, solo piensen en esto. ¿Por qué ningún presidente antes lo ha hecho? ¿Acaso todos eran tontos? O tal vez entendían que las cosas no son tan simples como decir, hazlo en América. Y el otro tema, ¿no? Los aranceles al 50% de productos europeos. Esto no es una negociación, eso ya es una amenaza. Y las amenazas en comercio internacional, amigos, no terminan bien, lo hemos visto en los últimos meses. Si tú subes tus aranceles, el otro país hará lo mismo. Es una guerra de escaladas, nadie gana. ¿Quién paga el precio? El consumidor. Donald Trump dice que la Unión Europea nos está estafando. Pero ni siquiera se atreve a dar un ejemplo concreto, ¿no? Solo grita, nos roban, sin decir cómo ni por qué. Y eso, amigos, no es estrategia, eso termina siendo populismo. Alguien tal vez podría decir, bueno, pero es importante proteger la industria estadounidense, y claro que sí, pero la forma de hacerlo no es amenazando empresas o países aliados, es invertir en educación tecnológica, invertir en infraestructura, invertir en políticas que fomenten la innovación local. No es con decretos mágicos, tampoco es con tarifas punitivas, con lo cual vamos a poder competir contra Asia o contra Europa, ¿no? Es con estrategia, no es con tweets. En resumen, señores, lo que hemos visto no es política económica seria, es un espectáculo, es un show. Y lo más preocupante es que muchos lo compran como si fuera una solución real, ¿no? Donald Trump no está defendiendo a Estados Unidos, está usando el comercio como una herramienta política, solo para seguir alimentando su narrativa. Pero bueno, ahora quiero saber qué opinan ustedes sobre todo esto. ¿Creen que es realista fabricar productos como el iPhone en Estados Unidos? ¿Piensan que los aranceles pueden ser una herramienta útil o solo empeoran las cosas? Los invito a que me dejen sus opiniones en la caja de comentarios. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarme hasta el final de este video. Recuerda, como siempre, dale like, compártelo con tus amigos y suscríbete a nuestro canal Políticamente en Desacuerdo. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Hasta luego.